They found the tomb of a royal doctor who lived over 4,000 years ago, a man who held pharaohs' lives in his hands. This man knew secrets that only deities and kings were allowed to hear. And yet, when they opened his tomb in 2024, there was no body, just vivid paintings, untouched by time, and cryptic symbols carved into stone. Who was he, and why was he buried with spells linked to a scorpion deity? The tomb was buried deep beneath the sands of Saqqara. The doctor's name was Tete-Nebe-Fu. He lived around 4,100 years ago, during one of Egypt's most mysterious turning points, right at the edge of glory and collapse. These were the final days of Egypt's Old Kingdom. The sun still glinted off freshly built pyramids, but the shadows were already creeping in. The pharaoh, Pepi II, had ruled longer than anyone before him, 90 years. But by the end of his reign, the country was cracking. The power was slipping, the regional leaders were rising, and the Nile floods grew unpredictable. In this shaky period, the mysterious doctor thrived. His tomb was discovered by a Swiss-French archaeological team in the shadows of old pyramids. The weirdest part was that when they uncovered his burial chamber, they found no body, no golden treasures either. Unfortunately, the tomb had been robbed long ago. But what remained was something even more fascinating: the words and images left on the walls. The paintings are still vibrant, bright colors that somehow survived all those years underground. The walls show jars, containers, strange abstract patterns, and geometric shapes. And then there are hieroglyphs, lines and lines of sacred script carved with precision, like someone had poured their soul into every curve. These inscriptions revealed who Tete-Nebe-Fu truly was. Turns out, he wasn't just any doctor. He was the conjurer of Serket. Now, Serket was the female deity of scorpions, sacred and terrifying. Egyptians believed she could stop venom, heal bites, and protect the living from toxic elements. The title, Conjurer of Serket, meant Tete-Nebe-Fu was a specialist in treating dangerous stings and bites. And if he got an entire tomb for himself, he may have been Egypt's top expert in those things, a man who healed with both medicine and magic. But that wasn't all. He also held the title Director of Medicinal Plants, a title seen only once before in all of ancient Egypt. That means he knew the healing power of herbs, roots, and oils like no one else. Now, you might wonder, what plants in a huge land of sand? But in reality, ancient Egyptians used herbal medicine that would hold up in some labs today. They created pills, ointments, and inhalers. Most often they chose some active ingredient, a flavor to make it easier to take, and something to deliver it into the body. Sound familiar? And yeah, they didn't have many traditional plants, so some of these ingredients were bizarre by our standards, like using crocodile dung and acacia mixed with honey. They even had formulas for anti-wrinkle creams. And apparently, our mysterious healer was also chief dentist. This title is almost never seen in ancient records. Evidence of Egyptian dentists is incredibly rare. Turns out, our ancient genius didn't just fight stings and study plants. He was also trusted with teeth and jaws, which were actually a huge problem in ancient Egypt. These people may have built wonders, but their teeth paid the price. Ancient Egyptians constantly caught grains of sand in their mouths. They often ate grit-filled bread and raw vegetables, which wore down enamel and caused a horrible condition called attrition. This led to tons of problems, including tooth loss. They had to improvise back in the day. For example, crafting the world's oldest known toothpaste from crushed rock, mint, and pepper, which ironically only made things worse for the gums. Or a toothpaste from things like eggshells, pumice, and natron, a salty mineral used for cleaning. They were also inventing mouthwashes from celery, bran, and herbs to ease the problem. Some mummies were even found with crude metal braces and gold wires attaching missing teeth. Though we're not sure if these were for the living, or was it just a nice little addition added as an afterlife gift. So, Tete-Nebe-Fu specialized in all these fields. 3 rare titles for one man. Now, back in the day, he must have been admired as incredibly knowledgeable. In a world without modern science, he would have been like a sorcerer who knows how some leaf or bark could save a life. That's why archaeologists believe Tete Nebi Fu wasn't just any doctor. He was, most likely, the royal physician, the one who treated the pharaoh himself. We don't know for sure which king he served. Maybe it was Pepi II, and who knows, maybe that's why the guy lived so long. But if that was the case, Tete Nebi Fu may have lived through the final moments of the Old Kingdom, watching the Golden Age crumble from inside the palace walls. And then he was buried. The body was looted, or perhaps just lost to time. But the team says they're still studying the tomb, still uncovering the traces of this incredible man. Overall, ancient Egyptians were practicing medicine on a crazy advanced level. Some practices feel familiar even today. They had hospitals, specialists, surgeries, and many more things, even medical schools. Both men and women were allowed to be doctors. They healed with various methods and practiced surgery with actual tools, scalpels, forceps, even sutures. Some doctors treated only the eyes, others the teeth, the stomach, or even what they called the hidden diseases. They knew how to clean and dress wounds, could set broken bones using splints made of wood or reeds wrapped in linen, and even prevented infections. There were even proctologists. They also built the first prosthetics, like a wooden toe with leather straps that help people walk normally again. The oldest known prosthetic is 3,000 years old. Now, the most shocking part is how they actually even tried to remove tumors. A recent study looked at a 4,000 years old skull. It belonged to a man in his 30s. There were signs of past tumors, and around 3 of them, there were marks, surgical cuts made with a metal tool. That suggests someone attempted to remove or study them, maybe treatment, maybe an autopsy. There was another skull of a woman over 50 years old. It also showed similar signs, but with healed fractures from an earlier injury, which is amazing because her treatment might have actually been successful. Being a healer in this society meant something powerful. It meant being a priest, a scientist, and a magician all at once. To ancient Egyptians, medicine was a necessary art, and they treated it with as much reverence as they did their deities. That's because they believed that sickness could be both physical and spiritual. So a doctor could recite a spell while applying a salve, and a lot of their treatments worked. The reputation of doctors in ancient Egypt was so strong that leaders from other parts of the ancient world, like Persia, actually sought them out. Even Homer, the Greek poet, once said the Egyptians were the most skilled healers of all. Of course, their understanding of the human body wasn't perfect. For example, they thought the heart controlled thought and emotion. They also didn't know what the brain really did. But their approach, observe symptoms, diagnose, and treat, well, that's modern medicine. Sure, they prayed over the wound, but they also healed it, didn't they? Their most famous physician was Imhotep. That guy was a true polymath, an architect, priest, and a healer who became so revered he was later worshipped as a deity of medicine. Yep, a human who was so cool they turned him into a deity. He lived 2,000 years before Hippocrates, the so-called father of medicine. And yet, some people joke we should drop the Hippocratic Oath altogether and swear an Imhotepic oath instead. These people weren't just laying the foundations of pyramids, they were laying the foundations of healthcare.
When you hear the word mummy, you might get a chill down your spine. That's because most of us associate this word with those creepy characters we've seen in some scary movies. But in reality, mummies have helped us understand a lot about ancient civilizations, their rulers, and about how people used to deal with losing their loved ones. The people most famous worldwide for their mummies are the ancient Egyptians. They believed that some sort of existence after passing away was possible, if certain conditions were met. That's why they insisted on preserving the human body through the process of mummification and placing the mummy in a furnished tomb, kind of like giving it a fully functioning apartment of its own. Why did they believe in this? Well, because they were deeply connected to their natural environment for the most part. They saw the natural cycles around them, like how the sun rose every day, followed by the moon, or how new life was always sprouting from plants, even after they had wilted away. They also believed that the powerful spirit Osiris, who represented the cycle of passing away and resurrection, played a role in this process. To prepare for the afterlife, the ancient Egyptians followed certain rituals, like mummification, which involved using materials like honey, resins, and incense to preserve the body. There's no other mummy more popular than that of King Tut. He was a young pharaoh who ruled over 3,000 years ago in Egypt. The problem with discovering ancient royal tombs is that most of such burial sites were previously robbed. People knew ancient rulers had been left with many valuable belongings, so those locations became vulnerable to thieves. When King Tut's tomb was opened in 1922, people were excited because it had not been robbed, like many other previously discovered royal tombs. That's how well hidden it was. Inside, his mummy was encapsulated in a total of 3 coffins, including one made of gold. The objects found in his tomb showed us what ancient Egypt was like, and studying his mummy also helped us learn about the culture and practices popular at the time when he passed away. We also learned about his family by looking at his DNA. Scientists were able to discover that he had had a disease called malaria and a problem with his foot that might have made it hard for him to walk. Ramses II was another pharaoh in Egypt who ruled for 68 years, which was quite a lot back in the day. He was known for his expansion campaigns and building projects. Many objects from his time as a ruler still exist today, including a large statue of him. Ramses II was about 6 feet tall and lived to be about 90 years old. After looking at his mummy, scientists concluded that he may have had a medical condition that affected his spine. Now, remember those thieves I mentioned before? They are probably the reason why Ramses II ended up in a plain coffin in a secret collection of royal mummies at Deir al-Bahari, which was rediscovered in 1881. Thankfully, archaeologists were able to identify him because his journeys had been recorded on his wrappings. The process was really tedious too. In fact, in ancient Egypt, the mummification process could take a staggering 70 days to complete. A special person would say a very specific speech while delicately handling the body and drying it out using a type of salt called natron. They also used linen and resin to make the body look more lifelike and to wrap it in cloth. The tomb was equally as important for ancient Egyptians. The walls of King Tut's tomb, for example, were adorned with intricate artwork that depicted his journey to the afterlife, from his burial procession to his passage through the underworld. The ancient Egyptians believed that everyone made this journey after passing away, and they filled their tombs with items and paintings to help the person in their spiritual travels. Additionally, the walls of the tomb were decorated with spells from a special book, which contained a collection of poems that the Egyptians believed would help people reach the afterlife. And speaking of how important this journey was, people also placed food in these ancient tombs. In King Tut's tomb, archaeologists discovered 36 jars of vintage beverages and 8 baskets of fruit, which were believed to be left there to help him in his journey to the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that traveling to the afterlife took a really long time, so they left a lot of supplies, such as food and water, to sustain their loved ones. Pharaohs also generally had numerous luxurious garments and beautiful jewelry in their tombs to ensure that they would have a fashionable journey. These items included various types of linen clothing, such as tunics, scarves, gloves, and headdresses, as well as a lot of gold jewelry with precious stones, like bracelets, buckles, pendants, necklaces, rings, and even precious depictions of insects for protection. Some were also deposited with fans made from ivory and ostrich feathers to keep them cool in the afterlife. Some ancient rulers were even placed in their forever apartments along with boats. For example, Pharaoh Khufu built the Great Pyramid at Giza as his tomb, and a large ship was found inside. King Tut, however, was buried with multiple boat paddles, but no actual boat. Instead, he had 3 chariots and numerous walking sticks made of precious materials, perhaps indicating he'd rather travel to the beyond by land, not by water. Amongst the most interesting objects found near ancient mummies are bottles of oils and perfumes. If rulers were supposed to be fashionable, why not smell nice too, right? Also, some of them had some ancient kinds of board games, most of them made out of precious materials like gold or ivory. One of those games was called Senet. It was very popular amongst the ancient Egyptians and very similar to modern-day chess. The ancient Egyptians may have the most famous mummies out there, but they weren't the first to invent the procedure. In fact, it all started in South America with an ancient civilization named the Chinchorro. As far as we know today, these people were the first to mummify their loved ones that had passed away. They did it somewhere around 2,000 years before the Egyptians started their own rituals. Sure, we can tell a lot about ancient rulers by studying these mummies, but until recently, we had no idea what they really looked like during their lifetime. Not so long ago, though, some very special mummy paintings were found by archaeologists studying ancient Egyptian objects. These mummy portraits are highly detailed paintings of individuals that were made while they were still alive. Such paintings were often painted on wood, as opposed to the classical portraits we all know about, which are painted on canvas. They are known for their realism and beauty, and have even been used by researchers to diagnose diseases by comparing them to the corresponding mummies. Some of these portraits also include depictions of jewelry, which was later found on the mummies. The recent discovery of these mummy portraits in Central Egypt is significant, as it marks the first time in over a century that such paintings have been found. Mummies appeared all around the world naturally, too. Mummification can occur without people intervening because of natural conditions, like extremely cold or hot environments, places with a lack of oxygen, or accidental exposure to chemicals that preserve the body. These conditions don't allow bacteria to grow, resulting in the body remaining more or less intact. Famous Otzi was one of these mummies. We know today he was a man who lived around 5,000 years ago in Europe. But upon his discovery in the Alps in 1991, Austrian authorities initially believed that he was a modern mountaineer because of how well preserved the body was. However, after the Iceman was removed from the glacier, it was determined that he was actually from the Copper Age.
Wow! Scientists have found a lost city beneath Egypt's pyramids. And it's incredibly large, bigger than the biggest target you can imagine. Underground chambers, passageways, and vertical structures. Scientists have no idea what purposes they serve. But let's start from the very beginning. Italian and Scottish scientists studying the Pyramid of Khafra discovered something that looked like secret tunnels under 3 pyramids. This find might change what we know about ancient Egypt. The expedition, called the Khafra Project, was led by Corrado Malunga from Pisa, Italy, and Filippo Biondi from the University of Strathclyde, Scotland. Their mission was to focus on exploring Khafra's pyramid, the second largest on the Giza Plateau. Scientists uncovered a massive structure beneath the Pyramid of Khafra. Could it be an ancient Egyptian underground city? The experts analyzed the data they had and came to the conclusion that 8 large vertical structures could be hiding beneath, possibly wells or shafts. They extend a staggering 6,500 feet across. Imagine placing 2.5 Burj Khalifas on the ground, one after another, and you get the sheer size of this find. These shafts also plunge nearly 2,000 feet underground. Some of the deepest underground stations in the world are located at a mere 380 feet underground or so. These cylindrical shafts are surrounded by spiral paths. Picture some old Gothic castle. They're connected to 2 giant, weirdly shaped chambers. Are those cubes? Or possibly bowls? Each of these chambers is likely more than 260 feet across. Now, even though we know about the structures now, no one has figured out their original purpose yet. Want to hear something even more shocking? Okay then. The team is almost sure that similar access points can be found under all 3 pyramids. In other words, all of them might be linked by a hidden system of underground tunnels, chambers, and passages. Even deeper, about 4,000 feet under the surface, there might be more unknown structures. And doesn't it add to the mystery? But the coolest news is that, according to some team members, these hidden structures near Giza pyramids could align with the legendary Halls of Amenti. In ancient Egyptian mythology, it's a place where people are believed to arrive when they're close to the end of their days. There, they are said to take a 3-day-long trial, facing their biggest fears. Now, how did scientists even discover these hidden spaces? To uncover them, researchers used 2 satellites positioned 420 miles above Earth. They sent radar signals to the Giza Plateau, and these signals generated detailed images, which were later compiled into a 3D model of the underground layout, including the newly detected shafts. Then, using synthetic aperture radar or SAR technology, which is a type of radar that can penetrate through stone, the team also spotted 5 small room-like structures hidden deep within the pyramid. One of these chambers contained a sarcophagus, which was once thought to be the tomb of Pharaoh Khafre. But now, scientists believe this was a mistake. The true burial site is likely to be elsewhere. In any case, these 5 hidden rooms were completely unknown before the scans. They seem to be arranged in the center of the pyramid and are linked to underground pathways leading somewhere below the structure. There's an opinion that these tunnels could lead to more hidden chambers and wells. Some of them might be around 4,500 years old. Wow! What if they help us solve ancient civilization mysteries? Preliminary data suggests that all this underground space can be much more than a few empty chambers. There might be many more hidden structures near the Giza pyramids. How come? Well, the thing is, the structure appears to include hollowed-out sections with spiral pathways leading even deeper underground. Refining the images hinting at this could reveal an extensive subterranean network. It might be a whole city hidden under the surface. Now, despite the excitement surrounding these findings, there are also a lot of people who don't believe in the existence of the underground city. They're skeptical about the archaeological discovery in Egypt due to the lack of peer-reviewed verification. That's why several archaeologists and radar experts have challenged the validity of the claims. They've explained that the technology used to make the discovery may not be advanced enough to produce such detailed underground imagery. According to them, the 5 smaller chambers found near the surface could be natural formations, since the area had had sacred significance long before the construction of the pyramids. Some experts have even dismissed the use of radar methods in this context altogether. They call these methods scientifically unproven and question their accuracy. The discovery has also reignited discussions about ancient Egyptian myths and the possibility of hidden texts lying somewhere beneath the Giza pyramids. The layout of the newly detected underground chambers shares similarities with mythological accounts of the Hall of Records, a rumored chamber that could preserve early Egyptian wisdom. If confirmed, these findings could significantly reshape the understanding of Egypt's sacred topography. Plus, this lost city beneath Egypt's pyramid could become physical evidence of previously unknown underground structures. That's why the Khafre project is super eager to begin excavating to confirm their findings. But getting approval from Egyptian authorities is a challenging process. The discoveries still need to undergo peer review before they are accepted by the academic community. By the way, this recent archaeological discovery in Egypt comes on the heels of another discovery involving a weird structure beneath the Royal Giza Cemetery, which researchers believe is unnatural in origin. Archaeologists used remote sensing techniques and uncovered a mysterious L-shaped structure underground in the Western Cemetery of Giza. This area is known to house burials of royal family members and high-ranking officials. Many of the tombs in the cemetery have above-ground mastabas, rectangular stone or mud brick structures with flat roofs. But there is an area in the center of the cemetery where there are no above-ground structures. To investigate this unexplored region, the team used electrical resistive tomography and ground-penetrating radar. ERT works by sending electrical currents into the ground and measuring the resistance to detect remains. As for GPR, It sends radar into the ground and maps the structures based on the radar's return. The team found an anomaly about 6.5 feet beneath the surface. It appeared to be an L-shaped structure measuring at least 33 feet in length. The readings suggested that the structure had been backfilled with sand after its construction. This made the team hypothesize that it could be a mix of sand and gravel, or possibly an air void. This anomaly was classified as a highly resistive structure, which meant it didn't occur naturally. Motoyuki Sato, the study's lead author and professor at Tohoku University in Japan, claims that the structure is not a natural formation due to its sharp shape. Another weird thing about ancient Egyptian pyramids is that historians have long believed that they were built primarily for royals and high-status individuals who had the wealth and power to create such massive structures. However, new research from the archaeological site of Tombos in modern-day Sudan challenges this assumption. The thing is, Tombos' pyramid may have served as burial sites for low-status workers as well as elites. The hard-working members of ancient communities may have found their last resting place in some of the most visible monuments, including the pyramids. Located along the Nile River in the ancient region of Nubia, Tombos became part of Egypt after its conquest of the area around 1400 BCE. That's when Egypt established the site to strengthen its colonial control. Workers at Tombos built pyramids, but those were much more modest than the famous pyramids of Giza. The research team reanalyzed 110 human skeletons from Tombos, originally studied in 2012. In particular, they examined the entheses, the areas where tendons and ligaments attach to bones. Such an analysis can give us insights into the amount of physical labor a person performed. When someone does hard labor, their bones often develop distinct crests and ridges at these attachment points due to the stress on the tendons and ligaments. And while some skeletons showed little change in their entheses, suggesting they belonged to individuals from the upper classes, others showed more serious changes. It means they belong to lower-class workers. This finding can totally challenge our earlier understanding of pyramid burials, especially the idea that only elites were buried in the pyramids, because the pyramids themselves were designed for the elite. This recent research may prove that lower-class workers may have found their final resting place in these monumental structures too.
The year is 1923. Two teenagers sneak out of their homes in the middle of the night in Florida City. Rumor had it that an old man was building a rock castle by himself. But every time someone tried to see what the old man was doing, he would stop working. The curious teens managed to sneak into Ed's backyard and saw something they could later describe as magic. They recalled seeing rocks moving around like helium balloons. The old man was moving up to 30 tons of stone by himself to build his castle. Even if he didn't allow anyone to see him working, he would proudly talk about it around the town. But whenever people asked how he was building a stone castle all on his own, he simply answered, "I cracked the secret of the pyramids." This story begins in Latvia, Edward Liedskalnin's home country. Edward was born in a small village on January 12, 1887. He was born in a family of stonemasons, which is probably where he learned ancient techniques of building. However, he grew up as a sickly boy, which meant he could never carry much weight or undergo heavy physical activity. At the age of 26, an unfortunate turn of events determined Ed's fate. The love of his life broke off their engagement, and heartbroken Ed decided to move to the United States. He lived in a couple of American states before finally moving to Florida, where his life's adventure started. Ed spent years searching for the right spot of land to build his dream house. He always rejected good farmland. When people wondered why, he only smiled. Finally, when he bought land of his own, it was deemed terrible by his close friends. The soil was bedrock. He could neither plow nor farm it, but it seemed perfect for what he was seeking to build. Ed's close friends would often describe him as eccentric. When asked why he wanted to build a house, he would only say, "It's for my sweet 16. Someday she's coming back." Then, he'd change the topic of the conversation. It took Ed about 30 years to finish Coral Castle, and he did it all by himself. He would only work under the cloak of night and never let anyone see what he was doing. The completed Coral Castle embodies a number of unsolved mysteries. If you were to visit the site back then, you'd have to go through a 9-ton, 8-foot-tall revolving gate door that even a kid could push with just one finger. Ed was so proud of this door that he originally named the site Rock Gate Park. It was renamed Coral Castle only much later, after Ed's passing. Once inside, visitors would access the incredible wonders of Ed's constructions: towers, mystic symbols, furniture, and swing sets, all made entirely of monolithic blocks of stone. The stones are set on top of each other, using only their weight to keep them together. And believe it or not, the entire park gathers around 1,100 tons of stone. Today, if you visit Ed's living quarters, you'll even see the simple instruments he used to construct all of this: chisels, hammers, ropes, and pulleys. The type of work he did is difficult even with modern-day equipment, let alone without it. Coral Castle's main mystery lies in how Ed managed to do it. The only photograph of Ed Leedskalnin at work shows a simple leverage structure of a chain hoist attached to a wooden tripod. The tripod was made of old telephone poles with a small wooden box on top. What was in the box is, of course, a mystery. Unfortunately, he took his secrets with him, not sharing the truth of his work with anyone else. Yet, not all is lost, as there are many theories and speculation surrounding what could have happened there. One theory says that there is a harmonic grid inside the Earth's surface, something that would create anti-gravity spots around the globe. It's believed that Coral Castle was built in such a spot. This could explain why it took Ed so long to find land that pleased him. Maybe what he was looking for was a place that allowed him to experiment with anti-gravity forces. Yet, whenever Ed talked about his work, he would say he understood the laws of weight and leverage, and, sure thing, that he had cracked the secret of the pyramid builders. And what secret is that, you might ask? According to Ed himself, it has to do with magnetism. He even published a pamphlet called Magnetic Current. There, he explains that every object has magnetic particles inside of them. A person just needs to understand where they are located inside such objects. This way, objects can be lifted and moved around without much effort, just like moving something heavy underwater. Researchers say that if we assume Ed Leedskalnin and the pyramid builders used the same technique, then it would only have taken 4,700 workers to build the Great Pyramid of Giza, instead of the 20,000 to 100,000 that is currently estimated. But this story just keeps on getting more and more mysterious. In the late 1920s, Ed was finishing the construction of Coral Castle in Florida City. Rumors about his work had spread around town. People said Ed was hiding a stash of money somewhere in his living quarters. One night, a group of men waited until Ed was alone and broke into the castle to rob him. They couldn't find the money and, luckily, didn't harm Ed. But in the following days, he decided that it was best he moved out of that land. Of course, he took more than his toothbrush along with him. Ed decided to move the entire Coral Castle to another land 10 kilometers away from where he had built the park. Legend says he hired a truck driver and asked him to swear secrecy about what Ed intended to do. He asked the driver to look away while Ed loaded the truck by himself, moving all of the rocks without any help. With the truck loaded, Ed and his castle moved to Homestead, Florida, where the park is located until this day. In 1986, a group of engineers from Florida University was called to try to fix the park's gate entrance, the 9-ton revolving door that Ed was so proud of. They arrived with plenty of modern-day equipment, including a 20-ton crane. When the engineers took the door down, they noticed that Ed had used a strange circular stone at the bottom of the revolving door. The engineers couldn't understand how this frisbee-sized rock could withstand 9 tons of weight without breaking into pieces. They sent the rock to the geology department at the University of Florida, but the geologists simply returned the rock, saying they couldn't find a match of this rock in their databases. They couldn't determine its origin. The engineers put the 9-ton gate back into place, trying to use other techniques. At first, it didn't work without the base rock Ed had originally used. So, they had to cut the gate rock to make it work as a revolving door once again, proving that modern-day technology couldn't replicate what Ed had done single-handedly. Fast forward to 2011, and another man claimed to have cracked the code of the pyramid builders and Ed Leedskalnin himself. Wally Wallington, a retired construction worker from Lapeer County, Michigan, has managed to build using similar techniques to those used by Ed. Wallington is known for having built his personal Stonehenge in Michigan. He is said to have used simple machines, such as levers and counterweights, moving around multi-thousand-pound concrete blocks. Unlike Ed, Wallington has shared his techniques with the public. Multiple videos are showing the clever engineering he built from very simple materials. It sure is impressive. The man has moved his entire barn into another property just with the help of simple tools. However, there is no way to prove that these were the same techniques used to build Coral Castle. To this day, the secrets of Coral Castle haven't been unraveled. But hey, we can always keep trying to solve it.
You have heard about Nikola Tesla. You have definitely heard about the Great Pyramids in Egypt. But what if I told you that Tesla may have probably uncovered the ancient mysteries surrounding the pyramids? Wait, what? Is this a crossover episode? Nope. It's highly probable that the secrets of the pyramids are hidden in plain sight. But first, let's recap what we know about the pyramids. What's so mysterious about them? I mean, they are just old quirky buildings, aren't they? One of the biggest questions is how they were built. Some people think that the pyramids were created by people using only their hands and muscles. But others think that there might have been some kind of crazy energy source that we don't know about yet. Like, what if aliens helped out or something? Just kidding. But this idea of some unknown energy source being used to build the pyramids has been around for ages. Even in old texts, like the pyramid texts, it talks about how the gods gave us something to build a great power. So maybe there was something really powerful and mysterious going on back then? Who knows? Back in the early 1900s, he got obsessed with the Great Pyramids of Egypt. He read numerous books about these ancient structures and was blown away by how much energy they seemed to have. At that time, not many people knew much about electricity, and Tesla started to wonder if there was some kind of advanced tech hidden in the pyramids. He had an idea that the power of the pyramids had to do with electromagnetism, and he put a lot of time and effort into trying to figure out the mystery. Tesla had some pretty unusual theories about the Great Pyramids. He thought that they could actually store and move electricity, which could then be used to power up the areas around them. He also had this theory that the pyramids were built using some kind of crystal energy. He believed that the chambers inside the pyramids could have these super powerful crystals that could control the electromagnetic fields. But that's not all. Tesla also had this idea that the materials used to make the pyramids had properties that allowed them to trap energy from the sun and the moon. And not just a little bit of energy. He thought that the pyramid could actually create this massive energy field that could light up whole cities or even brighten up dark places. He thought that the pyramids could be used as giant power plants to generate electricity and run machines. Tesla even believed that the pyramids were somehow linked to cosmic energy, which could be used for spiritual enlightenment and healing. How very new age of him. Anyway, Tesla wasn't just pulling these ideas out of thin air. He was seriously into studying everything he could about the pyramids, from ancient artifacts and texts to hieroglyphs and drawings. And he came up with this idea that the pyramids were designed to be energy amplifiers, and some kind of unknown energy source was used during their construction. Some people thought Tesla was eccentric for coming up with these theories. But his ideas have actually had a huge impact on the way we think about the pyramids today. Researchers and scholars have been digging into his theories for years and using them to uncover some of the biggest mysteries surrounding these ancient structures. For example, recently scientists have used theoretical physics to investigate how the Great Pyramid of Egypt would react to certain radio waves. They found out that if the radio waves were a certain length, the pyramid could concentrate the energy inside its rooms and focus it under its base. The scientists did lots of calculations to figure this out. They first thought about what radio wavelengths would work best. Then they made a model of how the pyramid would react to the waves. They figured out how much of the energy from the waves would get absorbed or spread out. Lastly, they checked how the energy would move around inside the pyramid when the waves hit it. To help explain all of this, the scientists used something called multipole analysis. This is when you take a complicated object and break it down into simpler parts. Then you can see how each part interacts with the energy that's coming in. It's like taking apart a puzzle to see how each piece fits together. The researchers are interested in how all of this can be used in the future. They want to make really tiny particles that can do the same thing as the pyramid, but with light. By changing the size, shape, and the material of these particles, they can control how the light moves around them. This can be really useful for things like making tiny sensors or super efficient solar cells. The scientists had to make some guesses when they were doing their research. They assumed that there weren't any hidden spaces inside the pyramid, and that the material used to build it was all the same. But even with these guesses, they still made some pretty impressive discoveries. But the pyramid study is not the only proof that Tesla was ahead of his time. There are more Tesla's projects that seemed unrealistic at the time, but that scientists and enthusiasts reevaluate and try to implement today. Let's talk about Tesla's most ambitious project, the Wardenclyffe Transmission Tower. Back in 1900, Tesla was already a big shot when it came to electrical engineering in America. People were blown away by his amazing inventions and the fact that he managed to outdo Thomas Edison in the battle of currents. However, Tesla wasn't content to rest on his laurels. He decided to embark on his most ambitious project yet, the transmission tower at Wardenclyffe. It was built between 1901 and 1905, and it was based on one of Tesla's breakthrough ideas. He had a vision to make the impossible possible by creating a global wireless communication system. It would use Earth itself as a conductor, transmitting music, news, stock market reports, secured military communications, and even facsimile images. Does it sound familiar? Right, it sounds just like the internet that we use today, only without the use of any wires. But Tesla had a much bigger dream in mind: to transmit power wirelessly. He already proved that high-frequency signals could be sent without any wires using his Tesla coil transformers, and this sparked his obsession with wireless energy transmission. His vision was to not only transform the way we communicate, but also to find a way to transfer power currents globally by tapping into the Earth's natural energy. Tesla believed that there was an abundance of free energy all around us that could be used for humanity's benefit. In 1899, he conducted some top-secret experiments and got convinced that it was possible to transmit electrical power through the Earth's upper atmosphere. This is actually how the Wardenclyffe Tower was created. It was supposed to be the prototype station for a network of towers all over the globe that would provide the whole world with wireless energy. Unfortunately, Tesla didn't have the resources or the patience of his investors to bring this project to fruition. It ran into all sorts of financial problems and roadblocks, and in 1917, the unfinished tower was finally torn down for scrap metal to pay off Tesla's mounting debts. Now it remains a sad reminder that even the greatest minds can sometimes fall short of their dreams. The original red brick laboratory, however, is still there, and it is the only Tesla lab that has survived. Fun fact, in 2017, a film crew made a crazy discovery. They used ground-penetrating radar to explore the area around Wardenclyffe, and they found a whole series of tunnels stretching for hundreds of feet underneath the site. Nobody knows exactly what these tunnels were used for, but people have been speculating for years that they were part of Tesla's grand plan. Wardenclyffe, of course, is a major landmark for Tesla enthusiasts from all over the world. Who knows? Maybe someone will finally crack the mystery of the tunnels one day. But even if they don't, the legacy of Tesla and his amazing ideas lives on. Whenever you hear about ancient ruins, you almost never picture them being suspended somewhere, or just randomly hanging on the branch of a tree, right? In fact, for most of the ancient artifacts we have exposed in museums all over the world, archaeologists did quite an impressive amount of digging. You see, buildings have this funny way of fading away over time if not properly taken care of. Sometimes we need to reuse some building materials, so an older construction may be sacrificed in the process. Other times, houses are abandoned, and once they are exposed to the elements on the surface, like rain or sunlight, they don't really stand a chance. Some just simply crumble away due to good old erosion. So the only way a piece of architecture can survive the test of time is if it's somehow gotten buried deep down. Now, how did they end up buried in the first place? Well, it's quite the comedy of errors. Ancient cities had a habit of gradually raising their ground level like a kid adding toppings to their ice cream sundae. You see, these settlements were always busy collecting food and building materials to keep up with their ever-growing population. But hey, who has time to deal with waste and rubbish? It wasn't exactly high on their to-do list back in the day. So when it came to building new houses, ancient civilizations found it much easier to save their sweat and tears by piling up the rubble and constructing right on top. But that's not all. Rivers would also occasionally flood and deposit a layer of sediment on the city floors, further encapsulating those ancient constructions. And in those dry regions like the desert, where the wind likes to show off its sand and dust dance moves, you can bet it was a constant struggle to keep the establishments clean. One hilarious example is the Sphinx, which had its head buried in sand until a group of archaeologists unearthed it in 1817. Some ancient towns eventually got covered up because they were completely abandoned. With less human activity to control their expansion, plant seeds couldn't resist the opportunity and sprouted all over the place. They gobbled up carbon dioxide from the air and grew, adding more and more bulk to the ground. Those cheeky roots even decided to stabilize the soil made from decaying plant matter, creating layers upon layers of earthy goodness. It's like the ultimate DIY project Mother Nature embarked on, with plants as her loyal helpers. The act of digging into the secrets of ancient civilizations is not just about unearthing a lost world. It's also an epic quest to reveal the hidden treasures beneath layers of history. But how do archaeologists know where to dig in the first place? If everything is covered in layers upon layers of sediments, debris, and plant roots, they must have some sort of system they rely on before embarking on a new project, right? For starters, they're not always the ones suggesting an archaeological dig in a certain location. Let me explain. Let's say you're a contractor and you want to build a new fancy apartment complex in your city. Some local legislations have certain requirements before your project can start, though. For instance, before anyone starts building on a piece of land, they might need to bring in specialists to check the soil. These clever folks can be archaeologists, geologists, or paleontologists, and they need to keep an eye on things during development. If any artifacts or ecofacts, fancy word for organic remnants, are discovered, these experts swoop in to excavate and study them. But what about sites that have nothing to do with bulldozers and yellow hats? Archaeologists have more than one trick up their sleeves when it comes to locating ancient hotspots. They dive deep into historic records with a healthy dose of detective work. By sniffing out old documents and maps, they can piece together the puzzle of human activity in a specific area. If a site has been visited before, it's even better. Finding records of past excavations or historical accounts can give archaeologists lots of information on where to continue their treasure hunt. Before archaeologists start swinging their shovels, they engage in a bit of a visual scan mission. Armed with a grid system, they'll stroll around the site, keeping their eyes peeled for any artifacts that might be hiding just beneath the Earth's upper layer. From groundstone tools to historic glass and even ancient garbage dumps, yes, they're also valuable. These keen-eyed explorers can spot signs of human activity faster than most people. If they stumble upon midden soil, fancy term for a garbage dump, they know for sure that humans once called this place home. Archaeologists don't just rely on their trusty shovels, though. They have an arsenal of gadgets to aid in their search for hidden wonders. Geophysical tools are like their secret weapons. Take the resistivity meter, for example. This clever contraption measures the electrical component of the soil and any buried features or artifacts. A buried wall, for instance, will create a different resistivity reading than the surrounding soil. Magnetometers and ground-penetrating radar work in similar ways, showcasing potential hints of ancient treasures in the soil. And who could forget our trusty old friend, the GPS? It helps archaeologists map out precise locations, like a high-tech treasure map, leading them straight to their pot of gold. Care to virtually visit some of the most important archaeological sites in the world? Well, follow me. In the United Kingdom, for instance, you'll find this interesting place called Stonehenge. It's one of many henges scattered around, but this one really takes the cake. Picture this: massive ancient stones standing tall and proud, arranged in a funky outer ring and an inner horseshoe, with some smaller stones thrown in for good measure. And guess what? These amazing stones have been around for over 5,000 years. Talk about a serious case of rock-solid longevity. Now, here's where it gets interesting. According to local folklore, the legendary wizard Merlin whipped out his magic wand and poof! He teleported these massive stones all the way from Ireland. Apparently, some giants had assembled them there, but Merlin decided they would look much better at their new location. Others think it's just the ruined remains of an old Roman spiritual edifice. These amazing structures were built by our Bronze Age ancestors. With their simple tools and limited tech, they managed to create this monumental masterpiece. Impressive, right? Unfortunately, there's still so much we don't know about this area. Stonehenge's initial purpose remains a mystery to this day. Sure, there are lots of theories, but scientists have yet to agree on the subject. However, we do know that it's perfectly aligned to catch the sunrise during the summer and winter solstices. The ancient city of Pompeii is an equally amazing archaeological site. Picture this: Mount Vesuvius, a notorious troublemaker, decided to throw a volcanic tantrum and completely covered this ancient Roman city. It turned it into a time capsule, located outside present-day Naples in Italy. Fast forward to the year 1748, when a bunch of adventurous explorers stumbled upon Pompeii. Lo and behold, they discovered a treasure trove of well-preserved goodies: streets, houses, food. Probably a bit stale by then. Blingy jewelry, fancy sculptures, colorful frescoes, everyday household items, and even animal and human remains. It was like an epic archaeological party. From the looks of it, Pompeii had it all. Fancy houses and villas, a massive 20,000-seat arena, cute little artisan shops, hangouts like taverns. And let's not forget the saucy spots like those luxurious bathhouses for some intense pampering. There's also the Sanctuary of Apollo, where people used to gather for their daily dose of worship. And of course, the bustling heart of the city, the Forum of Pompeii, where all the cool people used to hang out. And guess what? Pompeii is so cool that it made it to UNESCO's World Heritage List back in 1997. That's like the ultimate Hall of Fame for historical awesomeness. It also includes many other famous buildings and sites, like the Taj Mahal in India and the Acropolis of Athens in Greece.
A gruesome discovery took place in Egypt some years ago. You want to hear about it? 16 human hands, carefully buried in 4 eerie pits. They didn't look too much like human hands at first, since they were abnormally large, but they were. Weirdly, there were only right hands. No left hands were in sight. It turned out that it points to the practice of an ancient dark ritual. Old Egyptian art and tales talked of a ceremony where warriors would present the right hand of their adversaries as proof of victory and ask for gold in return. Egyptians believed in the afterlife, so cutting off someone's hand meant you cut off their power eternally. Guaranteeing this type of defeat was interesting to the winning party. Here, the fight was between Egyptians versus Hyksos, who lived in what was once known as Canaan. Egypt has always been the center of some history-changing findings, and some time ago, this papyrus was found. If we stretched it open, it would be just a tad bigger than the height of a skyscraper. The world's tiniest skyscraper, which is located in Wichita Falls, Texas. When humans didn't write on their notes app, they wrote on this thing, made from the medulla of a papyrus plant. Around 2,000 years ago, ancient Egyptians wrote something reminiscent of a book where they describe most of their funerary traditions and their visions of the afterlife. It's considered one of the most important texts from ancient Egypt and is still sold in bookstores to this day. This ancient manuscript was unearthed from a chamber located just south of the Pyramid of Djoser, located in Saqqara. Oh yes, Djoser is the oldest pyramid in Egypt and not the Giza pyramids like most people think. So recently, the site of Saqqara buzzed with excited archaeologists who probably found one of Egypt's oldest complete mummies. They believe that this beautiful and well-preserved mummy was that of a wealthy man. He was discovered in a deep shaft, covered in layers of gold leaves. There are many symbols that show he was an important and wealthy man, like the band he wore on his head, the bracelet on his chest, and the fact that he was embalmed with a tunic, which was reserved for Egypt's finest. The most exciting part of the entire discovery was finding the resting place sealed with mortar, just as the ancient Egyptians had left it 4,300 years ago. Now this may sound weird, but back in 2008, archaeologists discovered a missing pyramid. Now it went missing because it deteriorated over the span of 4,000 years. Today, you can only see its base. It was a pretty important site back in ancient times. It is said that around the area of the pyramid, the ancients hosted a special type of ceremony where high priests would carry mummified remains of sacred bulls. Now here's a fun fact. Ancient Egyptians believed that Apis bulls were earthly incarnations of the city deity of Memphis and was connected to rites of fertility. It wasn't just any Apis bull, though. They needed to be all black, with a single white mark between its horns and a bunch of very specific characteristics. They were selected by the local priests and honored until they passed away. After that, they were mummified and buried in underground galleries. Meanwhile, this missing pyramid sort of disappeared around the 1800s. It was a German archaeologist who first found it in the village of Saqqara. He called it the Headless Pyramid when he first found it. But then, years after the official discovery, the desert sand came along and covered the whole thing. There were some excavations between the 19th and 20th centuries, but they weren't too systematic. That's why scientists were so thrilled when they dug an entire pyramid's base after removing the 25-foot mound of sand that was covering it. Oh, and it turns out American archaeologists are excavating a cemetery in Egypt that could contain over 1 million mummified bodies. So far, archaeologists have dug around 1,700 mummies. One of the main differences from other classic Egyptian mummies is that these people weren't kings and pharaohs. They were commoners that most likely lived about 1,500 years ago, when Egypt was controlled by the Roman and Byzantine empires. The name of the cemetery is cool, though, the Way of the Water Buffalo, just in case you want to check it out on your next trip. Other than bulls and buffaloes, ancient Egyptians also liked baboons. Are you seeing a pattern here? In the beginning of the 20th century, archaeologists discovered a site filled with mummified baboons in a place called, guess what? The Valley of Monkeys. An animal wouldn't have been mummified if it wasn't considered important. Certain animals were more important than others, since they were linked to specific deities. Jackals were connected to Anubis, the ancient god of the afterlife, and cats were likened to the female deity Bastet. Baboons were a pretty big deal, since they were believed to be connected to Thoth, the deity of wisdom and advisor to Ra, one of Egypt's supreme deities. The archaeologists who studied these animals weren't too happy. They think these baboons were kept inside and were deprived of sunlight for most of their lives. They had extreme vitamin D deficiencies and they were poorly fed. Maybe Thoth got angry with these baboon keepers. Just a guess. Since there's never a boring day for archaeologists in Egypt, they also found human mummies with golden tongues. Since Egyptians were all about the afterlife, they believed that golden tongues might help a person speak once they pass to the other side. I mean, it's a long shot, but hey, why not? Some of these mummies were placed in wooden coffins with goods, such as necklaces, pottery, golden artifacts in the shape of lotus flowers and scarab beetles, and iPhones. Just kidding. A new temple was also unearthed recently in Egypt. Scientists believe it was dedicated to honor Zeus Cassios. That deity would be a cross between Zeus, the almighty Greek deity of the sky, and Mount Cassios. While digging around the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, archaeologists spotted 2 pink granite columns poking out of the ground, and bingo. They believe these columns represented the temple's front gate and collapsed during an earthquake many years ago. And speaking of deities, there weren't only super serious deities. Recently, scientists unearthed a golden ring in a city south of Cairo. No, Frodo, it's not magical. It was a normal gold ring, but it had the depiction of the deity of fun, officially named Bes. This deity is often described in sacred texts as a happy, chubby dwarf. Today, many tattoos we get are sorta deprived of any sense and are made of aesthetic purposes only. In ancient Egypt, though, women would get tattoos as a token of protection for childbirth. That's what scientists think, at least. Around the Nile region, scientists found some mummies that had well-preserved tattoos, which is a rarity since the skin deteriorates so easily. 2 of these women tattooed their lower backs, and the drawings were simple. They were mostly pictures, including that same chubby dwarf we just talked about, Bes. He also had a side hustle as the protector of women during childbirth. Now, would you believe me if I told you ancient Egyptians invented robots? No? Well, that's because that's not entirely true. Sure, they were astronomers, mathematicians, and engineers, and somehow they also squeezed an eccentric invention into that package – an automated deity some scientists called Hathor. This wooden statue had been in the Metropolitan Museum of Art for years before someone noticed its secret. With the help of an X-ray machine, specialists discovered a mechanical operating system inside it. The pulley-like axis goes from the statue's shoulder to her left leg. When the system rotates, the statue raises and lowers her hand. Hey, pick me! Pick me! I got my hand up here. Miles and miles of yellow sand, treeless mountain ridges, and scorching hot sun over your head. And suddenly, something you'd never expect to come across in a barren desert. A small group of overexcited people. They're as happy as you would be if you'd won a lottery. They've just found an ancient tomb, once flooded with its walls in bad shape. But the stuff they discovered inside proves that this is the burial site of one of Egypt's most mysterious pharaohs. Historians have been hunting for his tomb for years, but no one expected it to hide ancient treasures. Fast forward. After careful examination of the site, Egyptian officials have announced the discovery of the tomb of King Thutmose II. It's the last missing tomb from Egypt's 18th dynasty. And this is also the first royal tomb found since King Tutankhamun's was discovered in 1922, in more than 100 years. A team of Egyptian and British archaeologists found the tomb in the Theban Mountains area, west of Luxor, near the famous Valley of the Kings. Before this, the site was only known as Tomb C4, but during their excavation, the team found clear evidence proving it belonged to King Thutmose II. Archaeologists actually found the entrance and main tunnel leading to the tomb in 2022. But at first, they thought it belonged to a queen because it was near the graves of Thutmose III's wives. It was also close to Queen Hatshepsut's tomb. Originally, it was prepared for her when she was just a royal wife, but everything changed when she became pharaoh. But we'll talk about this twist of fate a little later. But soon they realized that their discovery was much more significant. They found alabaster jars with Thutmose II's name and the words "deceased king" written on them. That's when they realized that the tomb was actually his final resting place. Sadly, Thutmose II's tomb has seen better days. According to the head of Egypt's antiquities sector and the leader of the Egyptian excavation team, the tomb suffered major damage from ancient floods not long after the pharaoh's death. Water swept through the burial chamber, likely destroying or displacing many of the original artifacts. Much of what had been once inside the tomb was moved elsewhere in an attempt to salvage it. The researchers found out that the tomb had a basic design, with an entrance, a sloping main corridor, and a burial chamber. The corridor was coated in white plaster and rose about 4.5 feet above the floor of the burial chamber. A large staircase and a very large descending corridor of the tomb indicated its grandeur. It took the team a long time to navigate through, though, as the tomb was blocked by flood debris and collapsed ceilings. Only after crawling through a 32-foot passageway with a small 16-inch gap at the top, the worst nightmare for those of us with claustrophobia, were they able to reach the burial chamber. There, they were in for another surprise. They cleared the debris, expecting to find the crushed remains of a burial beneath. But the tomb turned out to be completely empty. And it was not due to robbery. It had been deliberately emptied. The researchers soon realized that the tomb had been flooded since it had been built underneath a waterfall. It happened just a few years after the king's burial, so the contents of the tomb were moved to another location. That's why there was a second corridor in the tomb. It was most likely made to help remove King Thutmose II's body from his flooded tomb. Despite the damage, the excavation team made some really exciting discoveries. They found traces of mortar decorated with blue inscriptions, yellow stars, and fragments from the Book of Amduat, one of the most significant funerary texts in ancient Egypt. The book was meant to guide the deceased through the underworld, ensuring a safe journey to the afterlife. Now, how about we sneak a peek at ancient Egypt's 18th dynasty? It was all about conquering lands, expanding the empire, and building jaw-dropping monuments. Some of the biggest names from that era, Thutmose I and Thutmose III, both legendary warrior kings who left their mark in history. Thutmose I was a fierce fighter who led major military campaigns, pushing Egypt's border further south than ever before, all the way to the fourth cataract of the Nile. His victories gave Egypt access to new trade routes, stronger political ties, and more wealth. His conquests were so significant that they were recorded in the tombs of his top officials. Thutmose III, sometimes called Thutmose the Great, took things even further. He was not only an incredible military strategist, but also the commander of Pharaoh Hatshepsut's armies before becoming king himself. He led between 17 and 20 military campaigns, winning every single one and expanding Egypt's empire to its peak. He even created the world's first navy. Thutmose III is often remembered as Egypt's greatest warrior pharaoh. And sandwiched between these two powerhouses was Thutmose II, a pharaoh who doesn't get nearly as much attention. Hey, the middle child, right? His reign lasted only about 5 years before he passed away at around age 30 in 1479 BCE. He is kind of a mystery. No one really knows what he accomplished. For the longest time, even the location of his burial site was totally unknown. His body was actually found in the 19th century. It was just lying around in the mortuary temple of Deir el-Bahari, in a secret chamber where priests used to hide royal mummies centuries after their original tombs were looted by grave robbers. In other words, Thutmose II's body must have been moved from his original resting place at some point in history to protect it. During his lifetime, Thutmose II made at least one major impact on Egyptian history. He married his half-sister Hatshepsut. That might not sound like a big deal, but it helped her become Egypt's greatest female pharaoh after he passed. The catch? She kept her stepson, Thutmose III, off the throne for decades. When he finally took power, he erased her name from history out of spite. And still, Hatshepsut is one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, no matter if you're talking about a man or a woman. She brought a lot of wealth and art to Egypt. She led a big trading trip to a place called Punt, where she brought back things like gold, ebony, and incense. She also made sure her name lasted by building amazing structures that we can still see today. At Karnak, she added huge obelisks. One of them is still standing tall. She also was the one to build the Temple of Deir el-Bahari with its countless columns. She was buried there. Interestingly, Hatshepsut was often shown in art as a man with muscles and a beard, like how pharaohs were usually depicted. But she made sure there was always something in the artwork that reminded people she was a woman, like calling herself Daughter of Re or His Majesty herself. When she passed away in 1458 BCE, Egypt wouldn't have a female ruler as powerful as her until Cleopatra, about 1400 years later. According to Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities Secretary General, isn't that a mouthful? Hatshepsut's name actually appears in Thutmose II's tomb, meaning she might have even handled his burial. As for their final resting places, well, Hatshepsut was buried in the Valley of the Kings, and Thutmose II's mummy is now in the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, alongside other ancient Egyptian rulers. It gives visitors a rare chance to see the remains of a nearly forgotten pharaoh. Now, experts consider the discovery of his tomb to be one of the most significant in recent years. The artifacts found there add important details to our understanding of the history of the region and Thutmose II's rule. And even though the tomb's design is fairly simple and follows the same architectural style preferred by later Egyptian rulers, its historical importance is undeniable. In any case, the mission isn't over yet. Archaeologists are now focusing on solving another mystery. Where did the rest of the tomb's contents end up? The team is determined to continue their search. Who knows what other secrets they will uncover that have remained hidden beneath the sands for thousands of years.
This is not a dune set. This is a very real desert in Niger. Jado was probably built by the nomadic Sao people and is filled with ksars, which are fortified houses made of salt and clay, with giant walls and secret passages. Located deep in the desert, it was once a vital stop for trans-Saharan caravans, but is now a hotspot for smugglers and bandits. The site has been off-limits since 2002 due to its dangers. The origin of the ksars remain a mystery. No archaeological studies have been conducted, leaving many questions unanswered. Even today, shifting sands reveal and conceal parts of these ancient ruins, fueling local speculation about what might still be hidden beneath the desert. Speaking of connective tunnels, scientists were blown away by the discovery of lava tubes in Saudi Arabia. These underground passages form when molten lava cools down. Researchers believe that ancient nomadic groups may have utilized these tunnels to survive the super harsh desert climates. While excavating the tunnels, archaeologists uncovered artifacts, rock art, and skeletal remains. The art and animal bones show that the people who used the tunnels were probably sheep and goat herders. They're still piecing together whether these groups lived in the tunnels for extended periods or just used them as temporary shelters. The Great Pyramid of Giza has been standing for thousands of years, but it's still hiding secrets. Using special scanning technology, scientists found two hidden structures under an ancient burial ground. The first is a shallow L-shaped structure, and below it is a much larger space that could be a final resting place or a chamber. The smaller structure was filled with sand on purpose, while the deeper one might be an empty chamber. Experts believe the two are connected, possibly as an entrance leading to a secret chamber. This is big news because it might give us some more insight into who built the pyramids and why. The world is full of ancient writing, but some messages refuse to give up their secrets, like the mystery of the Bash Plemi tablet. This unusual stone, pulled from a lake in Georgia, is covered in symbols no one can read. Even with modern technology, experts are completely stumped. The tablet is about the size of a book, with 60 symbols carefully carved into its surface, but 39 of them don't match any known language. Some resemble scripts from ancient civilizations in the Middle East, India, and Egypt, but none are an exact match. To make things even trickier, part of the tablet is broken off, meaning a piece of the puzzle is missing forever. To rule out a hoax, scientists studied the tablet closely. They confirmed it's made of vesicular basalt, an extremely tough local rock. Whoever carved these symbols must have been really skilled. Based on similar archaeological finds, experts believe the tablet could date back thousands of years, possibly to the late Bronze or early Iron Age. Some symbols repeat, which could mean they're numbers. Maybe it's an inventory list, a record of battles, or even an offering to the deities. Until someone cracks the code, the Bash Plemi tablet remains an unsolved mystery from the depths of history. Experts are still stumped with what this Minoan disc might mean. The Phaistos disc is one of the most mysterious finds from the Minoan civilization. This 6-inch clay object, discovered in 1908, has strange spiral markings that no one has fully decoded yet. The disc has 241 symbols on both sides, showing everything from people and animals to tools and plants. Experts have come up with many theories about what the symbols mean. Some think it's an early form of Greek. Others suggest it's a prayer or a hymn. And some even believe it could be a letter from a king in Anatolia to a Greek ruler. Let's see who will be the first to figure this out. It's always a fun day at an archaeologist's office when they find something as big as a 2,000-year-old marble head. A French archaeologist mission went digging inside an old medieval house near Alexandria in Egypt and found a statue's head depicting an old, possibly ill man. This statue dates from the last Egyptian dynasty before it became part of the Roman Empire, and the site where it was found is associated with the likes of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. For archaeologists, even the smallest finds at this site means a lot. You've heard of Lucy, right? The Australopithecus that was an early ancestor for us humans. Well, scientists found some of her species' footprints somewhere in Tanzania. The so-called Laetoli footprints are over 3 million years old. The trail stretched 88 feet and has about 70 footprints, left behind when a bunch of early humans walked across some wet volcanic ash. What's cool is that these early humans were already walking on 2 feet, like us, not all hunched over like apes. The close spacing of the prints shows they probably had short legs and a shorter stride than we do today. In an ancient Egyptian temple, archaeologists uncovered a shrine unlike any other. A place dedicated to falcons and 2 mysterious deities. One deity had a falcon's head, while the other wore a crown with a sun disk and cow horns. But the most baffling discovery was an inscription that read, "It is improper to boil a head in here." At the heart of the shrine, there are 15 headless falcons carefully arranged on a pedestal, likely as offerings to the falcon-headed deity. One theory suggests the birds were boiled first, perhaps to pluck their feathers, before being placed in the shrine, following the strange rule carved into stone. Archaeologists also found a 13-inch iron harpoon nearby. Its true purpose remains unknown, although the shrine also held remains of fish, mammals, and bird eggs, suggesting that the rituals may have included feasting. And speaking of ancient Egypt, meet Hathor. Scientists named her after the ancient Egyptian deity of motherhood, music, and singing. This wooden statue, housed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, was thought to be just a beautiful artifact, until a surprising secret was uncovered. Using an X-ray machine, experts found a mechanical operating system inside it, with pulleys and axles connecting her shoulder to her left leg. When activated, the system made her hand raise and lower, an engineering marvel from over 3,000 years ago. The statue was created during Egypt's Middle Kingdom, around 1800 BCE, and is often compared to 19th century automata due to its advanced design. It's believed the statue was used in religious ceremonies, symbolizing Hathor's role in dance and music. An unexpected discovery happened in northern Kuwait, where a Kuwaiti Polish team uncovered a mysterious 7,500-year-old statue. The statue features an elongated skull, no mouth, narrow eyes, and a flattened nose. This feature is thought to be an Ophidian figurine, named after the Greek word for snake, and it was likely made by the Ubaid culture, a civilization known for their pottery skills. While no one knows exactly what role this weird statue played, it might have been linked to rituals or symbolic practices. Some scientists think these figurines, found in homes or final resting places, were tied to important cultural beliefs. We couldn't mention unresolved mysteries of this world without speaking about these elongated skulls. In the deserts of Peru, researchers uncovered 5 ancient skeletons, 2 with unnaturally elongated skulls. While head shaping was common in many cultures, these skulls defy explanation. local legends tell tales of the so-called gentiles, a mysterious race banished underground by the powerful deities. Some say this is what the skulls represent. Others think this is some type of genetic anomaly, which was confirmed after finding an infant skull, too large to be artificially shaped.
Imagine working 7 days a week on a large-scale construction site. You, along with thousands of others, carry millions of stone blocks and put them on top of each other according to a complex system. You work without modern construction equipment. You have no air conditioning or constant access to water. It's so hot outside that you can fry eggs on the road. You've been building the pyramid for decades, and now, when it's finally done, you enjoy the result of the colossal work of thousands of people. You're looking at a giant cultural monument of global value that will freeze in time and amaze people for tens of thousands of years. A few thousand years have passed. People in the 21st century see the pyramids and are like, wow, I can't believe humans have built this. Yeah, the people who built the pyramids wouldn't have appreciated such a theory. But actually, there are reasons to believe that people built it using some fantastic technology. From the outside, it seems the Great Pyramids are just big triangles of stone. People just put some heavy blocks on top of each other, and that's it. In fact, the design seems too perfect to be true. The pyramid consists of more than 2 million blocks. They lay so close to each other and are so even that you couldn't squeeze even a thin sheet of paper between them. Scientists still can't figure out the exact technology for building the Egyptian pyramids. One of the biggest and most famous is the Great Pyramid of Giza. This huge construction, well known all over the world, has one big secret. There should be a capstone on top of the pyramid. It's a triangular-shaped stone block, a small pyramid on top of a huge one. It's also called a pyramidion. The builders of ancient Egypt made it out of granite and limestone and covered it with gold. No records or old drawings prove that there was a pyramidion at the top of the Great Pyramid of Giza. But there's another ancient Egyptian structure with such a triangle, the Red Pyramid. It was built before the Great One, and its capstone has survived to this day. Archaeologists have found and reconstructed it. But where could the capstone of the Great Pyramid be? It's a mystery that still has no answer. Some are sure that some thieves have stolen it from the top. Maybe they just climbed up and pushed the pyramidion down. It makes perfect sense. The capstone was probably the most valuable element of the pyramid. Many scientists and archaeologists still don't know its exact purpose. Some believe that this peak covered with gold glorified the pharaohs. The capstone reflected moonlight at night and illuminated the entire space around it. During the day, the capstone reflected sunlight with its shiny surface. You could have noticed it from afar. The top of the pyramid was a kind of guiding star for lost travelers. All other stone blocks of the pyramid consist of limestone. People polished them to make them look shiny. In the past, they were even glowing and reflected light. You could see glowing pyramids from space, although they looked like tiny lights. Over thousands of years, winds, sandstorms, and rains have changed the pyramid's appearance. If people had taken care of them all this time, they would have looked like something out of science fiction movies, or the pyramids from Las Vegas. But unfortunately, we will never see their original appearance. Some archaeologists and scientists believe that the capstone could absorb the sun's energy and distribute it evenly throughout the pyramid. No one knows precisely why the Egyptians needed this technology. There's a theory the pyramids are ancient energy systems. The pharaohs applied this energy to use some unique technologies that were more advanced than all the achievements of the 21st century. And the triangular shape of the pyramids was ideal for boosting this electromagnetic energy. In theory, solar radiation, or electromagnetic forces, accumulated at the top of the pyramid, filled the inner rooms, and then went down the walls to the base. Any surface distortion could prevent the flow from spreading, so they had to create a perfectly smooth surface. That's why they installed the blocks so that nobody could squeeze a needle or razor blade between them. Many people believe in this theory because they built the pyramids from limestone. This material can hold energy inside itself. In the inner part, they created granite deposits to cause air ionization, that is, to create an electric charge. They also dug channels under the pyramid for water to transmit electricity. And at the top, they put a gold capstone, the best conductor of electricity. So, this is how you get a great power generator. Different cultures used similar technologies to create electricity all over the world. But these are all theories. If it had been working, humanity would have used these technologies today. There are mentions of the metal industry, chemistry, engineering, physics, mathematics, and astronomy in some ancient records. Most scientists don't believe in all these things. We know the detailed stages of the technology's development in different cultures. In the 21st century, scientists, historians, and anthropologists can track the evolution of all modern devices. If people had created some technological inventions in ancient times, the history of the world would have looked different. Perhaps all the achievements of antiquity could have been wiped off the face of the earth by global cataclysms, and it can happen to us. Just imagine how people would dig up a laptop in 5,000 years. Perhaps they wouldn't understand what kind of device it is. Another Egyptian wonder surrounded by mystery is the statue of the Sphinx. The Egyptians carved it out of a single massive piece of limestone about 4.5 thousand years ago. But scientists still don't know the exact date of its construction or who built it. People painted the Sphinx in different colors, so it looked much brighter and more vivid in the distant past. It was shining just like the Great Pyramids. Anyway, time hasn't only changed its appearance, but its name too. Initially, the Egyptians called it Hora-Mekhet. The Greeks renamed it the Sphinx about a few hundred years after it had been built. The Sphinx emphasized the greatness of the rulers of Egypt. It also performed a symbolic function of a watchdog guarding the tomb of the pharaoh and the paths leading to it. This version sounds realistic, since archaeologists have discovered many secret entrances at the foot of the Sphinx. Perhaps these rooms and intricate tunnels lead to underground halls with treasures. And treasures don't always mean gold and jewelry. According to legends and theories, the Sphinx guards the Hall of Records, the storage of all humankind's knowledge. The information about the ancient mythical state of Atlantis could be there. You can find many detailed maps of the internal dungeons of the Sphinx on the internet. They show structures 12 stories deep under the statue. It looks like a small city filled with gold, scrolls of knowledge, and various ancient artifacts. But don't believe all these maps. These are just theories. Several thousand years have passed, but people have very little information about it. Archaeologists know that there are still many strange and exciting things about the Sphinx that are still undiscovered. Some locals are afraid to research because they believe they can awaken something terrible from the underground depths. Therefore, it's mostly scientists from other countries who conduct the excavations. In 1998, scientists discovered strange tunnels leading to empty rooms under the Sphinx. They realized that some people tried to get there through tunnels in the past, and maybe those people took all the treasures that were there. One of the legends says that some powerful artifact lays beneath the Sphinx. Its technology can change the whole world, but the locals are hiding it because it can damage the planet. Some believe that you can find evidence of unknown technologies painted on the granite walls in the pharaoh's tombs. But most likely, these paintings and signs tell us the myths and legends of ancient Egypt. But what if Egyptian symbols and drawings are detailed instructions for using ancient technologies? What if the locals that lived at that time thought, People in the future won't be able to get energy themselves. Let's leave some detailed instructions for them. Anyway, there are many riddles and theories. In reality, the search for answers is a dangerous undertaking, since it's not easy to get into the underground halls. Excavations can ruin the structure of the entire Sphinx. Any person inside the tunnels may get lost and never be able to find their way back. Besides, it costs a lot of money. Now, what would be awesome is if people could invent some device that could scan underground areas and show their detailed models.